Welcome to the Plant Centered and Thriving podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kitchens. Hello, Plant Centered listeners. I am Ashley. I am so grateful you are here today. Today, I have with me Clara, who is a registered dietitian who specifically helps women thrive in menopause with a plant forward approach. She's worked in the nutrition space for more than 20 years, and she noticed that a lot of her midlife clients were struggling not just with weight gain, but low mood, brain fog, apathy, acne, hair loss, body aches. If you're listening, maybe you're like, oh, yeah, she's describing me. And she's made it her focus to help women with this midlife transition. Clara also witnessed the power of nutrition as a teen, watching her mother beat breast cancer in an unconventional way using lifestyle, nutrition, and spirituality. It ultimately made a life-changing impression on her and set her on the path to become a dietitian. Please join me in welcoming Clara to the show. Welcome to the show, Clara.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm especially excited because you're also a registered dietitian, and I always love the perspectives that you bring to the show as well. But before we get into all of that, which we'll save for the end, I would love for you to just kind of give us a brief background on what you do, who you are, and all those great things.
All right. I'm Clara. I am the vegan menopause dietitian. I focus on helping women thrive in menopause with a more plant-based approach. And because it's a very underserved area, a population area, just even in general menopause. And I found if you want to be more plant-based, oh, it's unsubstantiated claims are out there about protein, and you can't do menopause without eating animal protein, or you can't do this because you're a vegan, and you're going to break all your bones because you're vegan in menopause. And so I really try to get to that and help women thrive, because as a vegan, we do have some special needs that you might not have in if you eat more of the animal protein from the animal kingdom, or if you eat fish and so on. And so there are definitely a few things to look at, but it's absolutely possible to thrive as a vegan in menopause.
Yes. And to what you were saying, I have heard there is just a lot of misinformation around being a vegan in menopause or going into menopause. And also, too, I think there's maybe a lot of pressure from what I've heard, just personal experiences from people who have told me a lot of pressure from, like you're saying, like maybe healthcare providers of like, well, maybe you should incorporate some animal protein during this time, or this is maybe what it should look like. When people are like, but I don't want to do that. So I'm glad that you're
Yeah.
breaking those myths. So I know that you have your own unique story and what brought you to eating more plants in general. So I would love for you to kind of take us back to how that journey sort of started for you.
Yeah, and it goes way back. I was thinking, how far back did this go? I was about 14 years old. And I remember one day I came home, something had changed. My mother had gone to the doctor, and they discovered that she had a lump in her breast. And then they did more studies, and they found that she didn't just have breast cancer, but there was also a significant spot in her liver on both sides of the liver. And so there was this like a pause. I still remember it. I was just a teenager and I was in high school. Things were going well. And then there was this black cloud, this pause. And it took a couple of weeks. She went back to the doctor, got all the information. And, we go way back here. We go back, 30 plus years. And so she was basically told that she would have to have a liver transplant. So
Wow.
she said, okay, well, what does that mean? And they talked about it. And I remember as a teenager, this is really what stuck in my mind. They said, well, even after the transplant, maybe 4 years. So that
Wow.
meant I would be 18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was the last of six children. And so she was determined that was not going to
Oh,
be the case.
yeah.
So my mother being my mother, after she kind of, digested that shock, she went and she searched. She said, okay, so surgery is one option. What are the other options? And we had a very good friend who I grew up in the Netherlands. So Germany was very close by. We had a friend who was a, a physician, but did more like homeopathic and more what we would call alternative medicine. She went and got a consult there, and they came up with a plan. And so she told the physicians at home, I'm not going through with this.
Wow.
And so they said, oh, so what are you going to do? She said, I'm going to become a vegetarian vegan and I'm going to do the alternative therapy.
Oh my goodness.
They were not in favor of that.
I bet not.
No, no. But my mother made up her mind. She always also was a woman of faith. So because we're body, mind, and spirit, really, and I do want to bring that out. We can eat all we can, but if we're stressed out and we don't have a trust in a that there's something helping us, and for her it was God, then we're missing a part of being a person. It's not
Yeah.
all about the body; it's body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah.
And so, with the trust that God was going to help her raise her last kid, me,
Oh,
and she went that route. So we were, we ate meat like 3 times a week. Then we moved into no more meat because that's what that physician said. Gone with the meat. And so she started juicing and sprouting and went for treatments every week. And I don't even know all kinds of treatments because I was a teenager trying to go through high school, right?
yeah. Right.
Yeah. But she went every week to Germany, and again, also have that trust that God was with her, and this was her journey. I'm not saying this is what people should do, but this is what she chose.
Yep. Yep.
And I remember that 2 years after that, they could not find any lumps in her breast. It was completely gone.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah, the
Wow.
liver always stayed. It didn't grow. It didn't do anything. So she'd go like every 2, 3 years to get a checkup with the physicians in the Netherlands. But yeah, the breast cancer completely disappeared.
Wow. So she never ended up
Yeah,
like having the liver transplant, no surgical
no,
removal of anything.
she did not have a liver transplant. Now, once I was married, this was like, many years later, it recurred. And I think, this is my explanation. I She got me through high school, she got me through college. I was
Yeah.
married, and that was like, huh.
Yeah.
And it came back with like within 2 years, she passed away.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But I just saw what food together with the other therapies that she was doing,
Yep.
what that did, and it just made such an impression on me. And so she had to start cooking differently.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure. Very
yeah,
differently.
yeah, she was a good cook, but
Uh-huh.
at that time, traditionally was potatoes, meat, and vegetables. That's
Yep.
what we had every day. And the other 2 meals were bread and something on it, like cheese and all kinds of things. And so, yeah, it did change completely how we ate. So if I compare with my sisters, how they grew up, and I'm like, she never made that anymore. That
Yeah.
completely changed.
Yes.
Yeah,
Has that
yeah.
impacted the way that you all, if when you get together with your siblings, has that impacted, your kind of approach to a family meal versus maybe their approach?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm,
They still cook very traditionally, and I cook very internationally. I don't think I ever, well, like Thanksgiving, I will say, oh, I'm going to make a Dutch meal. It's, very traditional Dutch meal, or for Christmas, or for my birthday, or like special things. Then I'll make the traditional potatoes and vegetables. But in overall, I cook very international. And I think as she transitioned from traditional Dutch food to more international, because that was more vegetarian.
hmm.
Yeah, I cook very international compared to my siblings.
Sure. Yeah. So your mom goes to Germany, she comes back and decides she's not going to go through with maybe the first option
Mm-hmm.
that was presented to her. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that in general just brings up a good point that just because you're given one opinion doesn't mean that that has to be the one and only opinion or the one thing that you have to go through. So I like that you kind of gave that perspective of like, okay, that's one opinion. Well, what's maybe another one? And I think that's great for even the listener and a good reminder even for ourselves of like we can kind of search out other alternatives if that's something, if the first opinion doesn't quite align with the path that we want to go down.
Right, right. And for her, it was a lot of soul searching. It was a lot, okay, what am I going to do? I still have this 14-year-old in my home that I need to,
Yeah.
take care of. And once she kind of chose her path and then she put all her energy behind it. Yeah.
So, what was that like for you when the transition was taking place? Obviously, like the nutrition transition was taking place.
Hmm.
It sounds like you understood that, okay, this is for my mom's, well-being. But was there any ever thought of like, well, I don't really want to eat this way, or I don't like being maybe forced to eat this way? What were kind of what was your reaction just for yourself as you were going through the transition as well with her?
Yeah. I thought about that. I just embraced it because food was interesting and my mother was a super good cook. So it wasn't like we went from not from tasty food to non-tasty food. Like she made it very tasty. And what I had noticed with my sisters as they went through puberty, that they all gained weight.
Mhm.
And so I didn't want to do that. And I have three sisters. Well, I'm one of six, so I have three sisters and two brothers. So I noticed that my sister had gained weight, and I didn't want to go that route. And so
Mm.
her embracing a different lifestyle made sense to me, and I was all for it. I just cannot remember any feeling ever restricted because the food she made was so tasty.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like that helped a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because don't we eat for pleasure, for it tasting good and enjoying it, and so uh, she made it taste very good.
So, how did that experience shape your trajectory with food and nutrition and even maybe your career choice later on?
Hmm. Oh, it definitely affected my career choice because I saw what good nutrition can do, the power of it. And again, I'm not saying that if you have cancer, that's the only way to go, but I just saw the combination in my mom, and then I started to think, wow, who can do this? It would be kind of interesting to study this and understand what this is all about. And I want to help people. And, out of that came, I want to be a dietitian. And so very like I think I was 15. And the way schooling is set up, you kind of have to decide early on. So you have the right classes that you graduate in the Netherlands, so you can go on for your degree. So fairly early, I think I was 15. I was like, "Yep, I want to be a dietitian."
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. Did you know? Well, I mean, especially even, I mean, that because like you said, that was like 30 years ago. So you knew you wanted to be a dietitian, but what about more like on the vegan, plant-based side of things? Because obviously that was not really in the forefront of many people's minds back then.
No, I didn't. Again, that's being a teenager. I didn't even think about that part.
You sure?
A whole lot because the transition she made it so easy because we just still had very tasty food. And I know some people stopped inviting us over for meals because they just didn't know what to do with this vegetarian stuff.
Yeah.
um, and so to me it was like, no, I'm going to help people with food, not necessarily, oh, I'm
Mm.
going to help people be vegetarian. I'm just going to show people how you can heal with food.
Yep. That's really fascinating. And as you kind of went down this path, how did your experience with your mom even shape just how you approach clients now or how you approach your practice or working with people who are wanting to kind of use food as a way to nourish their bodies from the inside out almost?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. How do I use that? I think I have a part of empathy that I don't think some people have because they just haven't been there. Like I didn't have the cancer, but I might as well. I mean, she was so close, right? She was like
Yeah.
the closest thing, and she was. I mean, you're only 14. That's fairly young. So how does it impact me now? I think I have more empathy, and I also understand that when you do change, when it's tasty, and it is nourishing, that it kind of takes away that need for that other stuff.
Mm,
And
yeah.
the other thing too is that nutrition doesn't stand on its own because I can eat all the broccoli sprouts, I can eat all the tofu, I can eat all the whole grains possible. But if I'm an angry person internally, it's still going to eat me up. So it wasn't, it was a complete package. It was again the body, mind, and spirit. And I have clients. I actually currently have a client where we're doing everything right on the food part, but we're not getting anywhere. So even though, I'm not a therapist or anything, but we do address, what do we really believe? Do we believe this is going to work? Do we believe, this is really nourishing you? Are you, and what is holding you up in your mind? Because
Mm,
that is still a big part of, being well. It
yeah.
is, food is a part of it. So yeah, I guess I do use those elements that I learned, that food doesn't stand on its own. When food is tasty, you don't feel deprived because
Uh-huh.
you're not eating meat.
Right.
And nourishing food also, when you're well nourished, some of those cravings just kind of disappear. It is strange, but it just
Yeah.
happens because we're well nourished. So those cravings they kind of go to the background.
Hmm. So when you transitioned from being in the Netherlands to coming to the States, how was that transition, especially from a plant-based vegetarian perspective? How was that for you? Were there any struggles or any challenges that you had to overcome as you were transitioning over here?
Yeah, in some things it was better here. There were more options as into the dairy-free and meat substitutes that were kind of fun to try. There are some things I missed, of course, in the Netherlands. They have a line of non-dairy yogurts that is just awesome. It's not very sweet, it's tangy, it's just what I grew up with, but it happens to be made out of soy. So I missed that. But I felt like a world went open. I would spend like 2, 3 hours at that time at like a Whole Foods, because at the time I still had the samples out and I'll try all these samples. It was I always said it was going like to the toy store for me when I would go to a big health food store because all these things and reading all the labels and figuring this out. So it definitely felt like there were more options. And my mother would say, "Hey, can you bring this back for me? Can you bring that back for me?" So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
So some differences and some things that you miss from the Netherlands, like the
yeah.
yogurt, but it sounds like there were a plethora of options as well. And I can't imagine going into being used to your grocery stores and then being thrown into different grocery stores and having to go through the
Yeah,
process of like recognizing labels, knowing what's vegan, what's not, because that's obviously a big thing. Because there's always hidden
yeah,
ingredients sometimes.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, the whole food part was quite a change for me because the food that we ate was from a health food store, so it was grown on a smaller scale. And an apple looked like an apple, tasted like an apple. And then I got to college here, and there was this beautiful red apple, and I bit into it. And I was like, "What is this? I know it's an apple. It looks like an apple, but it absolutely doesn't taste like an
Yeah.
apple."
That
So there
sadly
was
doesn't
some
surprise me.
transition,
Yeah.
yeah, some transition there. But I got used to it, and found lots of other things that I didn't find over in the Netherlands.
Sure.
So yeah, I feel that there were more options here for the vegan vegetarian at
Yeah.
that time. And
Yeah.
even now, I mean, now it's just like really exploded.
Yes. Yeah, it really has. I
It's
know.
almost overwhelming.
Yes. Yes. We've talked about it on the show a couple of times. Like it's such a great time to be
Mhm.
alive as we're like seeing all of these plant-based options, coming to fruition. It's just incredible. And people are just incredibly talented and smart in the way that they're able to create some of these things.
Well, and there's a market for it too now. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Heck
So that's
yes.
exciting.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. So if you could go back as you were maybe not transitioning, maybe in the States, but is there any piece of advice that maybe you would give yourself or even give your clients who are trying to eat plant-based, but there are obviously some struggles along the way? Is there anything specifically that maybe you encounter with your clients that you help them through or try to help them understand when it comes to eating plant-based, around this pre-menopause, menopause phase of life?
Yeah. Just because it says vegan doesn't necessarily, you already shaking your head like that. Just because it's vegan doesn't necessarily mean it is going to be good for our health. That's one piece of advice. Uh, I do label reading, and it's like, why you do label reading? Yeah, I do label reading because the label really tells us. It says nutritional facts. Those are the facts. They're not trying to sell us. And
Mm,
so knowing how to interpret those is so important because, again, they will put the vegan on anything. But
yes.
is it really healthy? Is it really going to help me? And yeah, it's vegan, meaning that they didn't use animal protein, but it doesn't really mean that it's going to support my health in the long
Mm,
run. And
yeah.
I think that's one thing I still use a lot. And I had to do a lot of that transitioning from the Netherlands here. Getting to know some of these products is you just got to read the label and the ingredients and not look at the rest of the package, looking at the nutritional facts. And I still do that with all my clients. We go through that and figure it out. And I show them a few things like, is this a food you want to eat often or is this a food you want to occasionally eat? And that's another thing. There's no good or bad. There's like, okay, is this one I want to do every day or is this one I want to do occasionally?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I also learned that from my mom that you don't have to get rid of everything. Um, but still, you can keep a couple foods that you don't want to do every day, not even every week, but just keep them in the rotation. So it's special, you can enjoy it, you don't have guilt feelings about doing it. Um, so yeah, label reading and basically, I don't want to say make all foods fit because that's too definite. But there are some foods that you want to eat occasionally, not all the
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And our plant-centered listeners, they know that marketers are savvy. So you're right. They
Hmm.
will put anything on the front of a package to make it look sexy and something that we like quote should eat because it says vegan or high protein or whatever the fad is. So I
Hmm.
like that, just kind of being a bit more diligent in, okay, is this something that really aligns with my health, my personal journey? Is this something that I want to eat every day, like you said, or something that maybe is just going to be more sporadic or kind of like a fun food every once in a while?
Hmm. For sure.
Is there anything else with your clients that any struggles that you see that you kind of help them with? Just because I think, like you said, the premenopause, menopause phase just isn't really, there aren't a lot of dietitians that specialize in that specific area. So is there anything else that comes up that you help your clients navigate?
Yeah. So, especially we as women, we're so driven with the number on the scale. It's just how society is, how we're judged at the doctor's office. I mean, it's all driven by the number on the scale. And as we go into perimenopause and menopause, you might have not changed anything with your eating. You're just a happy vegan going along, and boom, there comes that transition and you find yourself gaining some weight, or you find yourself not sleeping through the night, or you find yourself just not being so happy. And it's not put out there that this is because your hormones are changing, and because your hormones are changing, your metabolism is changing, your gut biome is changing, the way your brain functions, your serotonin, your dopamine, all that is changing. And yeah, you might be eating all the right things, and it's just a part of the life change. It doesn't mean that being a vegan is not working for you or being more plant-based.
Mm,
We just need to look at, are there any deficiencies? Let's fix those, and let's look a little closer to vegans tend to be a little higher on the carbohydrate intake, and that's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but we need to look at what kind of carbohydrates are we ingesting? Is it helping us as we transition? Because as we transition, the estrogen goes down, progesterone goes down, and that changes how we store fat. It
mm,
changes how we break down our carbohydrates because there's a little bit more insulin resistance. And so things are changing. And I don't think it's recognized
mm-mm.
that that's what's happening. And as our body is changing, it's metabolizing differently, we should adjust how we're eating. And we can adjust. And that doesn't always mean that 20 pounds are just going to disappear. As we transition from perimenopause to menopause, women are at a higher risk for heart disease. They're at a higher risk for osteoporosis. These are if you're vegan or non-vegan. We also have more instances of divorce in this time of our life
Wow.
because we're going through all these changes and we don't know how to compensate, how to change. and it all just stacks up. And we have been often taking care of a family, taking care of everybody's needs. We run out of our house without really doing a breakfast, and it all just kind of comes together. And it's not because you're failing. You just need a plan. You just need some help and understanding your body again, because it's not what it was, and um, because of the change in the
Yeah.
hormones, and it has such a big effect on us. And yeah, there are definitely a lot of things nutritionally you can do that even is going to help your brain health.
Mm,
And so it's an exciting era, but again, happiness is often so tied to that number on the scale,
yeah.
and there's more to our life in perimenopause and menopause. Although I do understand the frustration because I'm there myself.
And I
Yeah.
think that's helpful too, you going through it as well and being able
Mhm.
to relate. Like you said, you're already an empathetic person, but that just takes it to the next level to really be able to not just relate to someone else who is also going through it, but also to be able to explain, okay, this is what's happening to your body. Because I'm sure a lot of women are
Mhm.
like, what's wrong with me, what is going on, why is my body doing this, and you're able to actually lay out the facts like, okay, well, here's what's happening, this is a natural thing that we go through, and to be able to walk them through that and give them that support, I'm sure is just so reassuring and comforting.
Right. And again, there's an approach of the body, mind, and spirit. So being in a good space in your head, having self-care. Some people worship, meditate, read their Bible. So we have to have some way of working on our spirit. The other part is so important, and a lot of my clients cringe when I say this, but we need to start doing weight bearing exercises. We need it.
Oh,
Our bodies
yes.
need it to keep onto that bone and to help our metabolism. But also, we put all these things in place, and some women still find themselves saying, Clara, I'm just not my old self. And you might
Mm,
never be completely old self because you're in a transition. And
yeah.
sometimes hormone replacement therapy might have a spot there. That needs to be decided on an individual basis. But again, if you just do the hormone replacement and then look how you're eating, it's like we're just band-aiding.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as effective as if we work on all those other parts of our lifestyle.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can still thrive. And as we are in transition, I find myself being more bold because, I've lived a little bit of life. And believe it or not, as our hormones change, we actually become more bold. We care a
Oh,
little less what everybody else thinks. Yeah. Has to do with the estrogen, the reduction in the estrogen.
hmm.
It's very interesting. And so it's good. I can advocate for the person that's just starting perimenopause because, I'm like transitioning out of that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm so glad that you came on to not just share your story, but also to share pieces of what you do, because I think that's really important, especially for people who are struggling or are going into perimenopause or are in menopause or even postmenopause. And to be able to have someone to support them through that, I just think it's invaluable. So I appreciate you breaking into that space because I know we talked offline. There's not a lot of dietitians who do that, or a lot of people in general. So for you to be able to sit down and kind of explain it and support them and all that, I just think is so wonderful, Clara.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I love helping women feel good,
Yeah.
and feel empowered. And I am with them. I don't want to eat. I was saying to my daughter, I don't want to eat dead animals. That's just not me.
Hmm.
I don't want to partake in that. And just because I'm a perimenopausal menopause doesn't mean all of a sudden now my, I need to start doing that.
Right.
It just goes against my soul. I just couldn't do it. Yeah. And I think you just recently had a post or a story on it that plant protein are not a lesser type of protein.
Right. Yep.
They are an
Absolutely.
adequate protein. I mean, yeah, we can't just eat the beans. We have to, rotate. There's some science behind it, but how you do that. So you do get all the building blocks to make any type of protein in your body, but they're not inferior. Plant proteins are not inferior.
Yes. Amen. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for coming on and sharing all of this. If people do want to connect with you or reach out to you or potentially work with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Probably on Instagram. I'm there a lot. Vegan dot menopause dot dietitian. I think you probably
Yep,
put that in your show notes too. But yeah,
we sure will.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll
love to
have,
connect. I love just helping women thrive.
yeah, it's very obvious. And obviously I can see you. So for those of you watching, you can see it as well. For those of you listening, hopefully you can hear it in Claire's voice because it's very apparent that this is something that she's incredibly passionate about. So I appreciate that. Well, yes. So we'll include all those links in the show notes. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Clara or myself. Other than that, Clara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was very nice chatting with you.
Yes, same. Yep. And for those of you listening, thanks for joining us as well. And we will see you on the next episode. Until next time, keep thriving.